The service crawl space beneath the Aurora vault did not smell like machinery. It smelled like ozone and crushed lilacs. Noah Mercer hated it. He dragged himself forward on his elbows, the magnetic pads on his knees, gripping the translucent floor that separated him from a 3-mile drop into the churning cloud ocean below. "Talk to me, Rosa," Noah said, his voice tight. He adjusted the acoustic visor over his eyes. "I am seeing harmonic dissonance in Sector 4. It looks like a bruise on the spectrum." Rosa Vale's voice crackled in his earpiece, dry and unimpressed. "That is because the choir lattice is throwing a tantrum, Noah. Maintenance reports say the subsonic hum dropped by 4% in the last 20 minutes. If it drops another 2%, the anti-gravity stabilizers in the East Wing are going to start feeling very heavy. And rich people hate feeling heavy," Noah grunted, shifting his weight. He was a man composed of sharp angles and grease stains, 40 years old, but wearing the exhaustion of a man of 60. He held a resonator wrench in his right hand, a tool that looked more like a tuning fork than a spanner. Around him, the choir lattice pulsed. It was not metal. It was a bio-quantum weave, living strands of light and sound that sang the city into the sky. When it was healthy, it glowed a soft gold. Right now, the strands to his left were a dull, sickly gray. "I am at the junction," Noah said. "It is not a mechanical failure. The lattice is scared. The vibration is retreating." "Scared of what it is, a building, Noah. A very expensive floating building." "It is a semi-sentient biostructure, Rosa. You know how it works. It feeds on ambient emotion. If the cord upstairs is stressed, the foundation gets shaky. Literally." Noah reached out, tapping the gray strand with his wrench. It let out a flat, discordant note, like a piano key struck underwater. "We'll fix it," Rosa said. "I have a date with a bottle of synthetic wine in 3 hours, and I do not want to spend it falling out of the sky." Noah began the calibration. He closed his eyes, listening to the hum of the station. This was his gift and his curse. He was an acoustic emotional engineer. He could hear the architecture, feeling things. Most of the time, the Aurora Vault felt arrogant, a soaring soprano of power and vanity. Today, underneath the arrogance, there was a creeping silence, a hollow gap where the sound should be. He worked in the rhythm he had perfected over a decade of hiding from his own memories. Tune, tighten, soothe, repeat. Then he heard the laugh. It was not part of the lattice. It was organic, small, and terrifyingly clear. It sounded like a silver bell dropped on a marble floor, ringing out for a split second before being choked off. Noah froze. "Rosa, is there anyone else in the sub-maintenance shafts?" "Negative. Just you and the rats. And since the rats here are genetically modified to clean filters, they usually do not giggle." Noah deactivated his magnetic knees and crawled toward the sound. The crawl space widened into a junction chamber, a small spherical room where the main arteries of the lattice converged. It should have been empty. It was not. Curled up behind a bundle of fiber-optic nerves was a child. She was small, perhaps 6 or 7 years old by human standards, though her skin possessed a faint pearlescent shimmer that marked her as high-born Orolith. She wore a dress that probably cost more than Noah's entire lifetime earnings, but it was smudged with coolant fluid. She was holding a severed piece of the lattice, a song wire, clutching it to her chest like a stuffed animal. The wire was dead black and cold, but she was rocking back and forth, humming a tune that had no melody. Noah slowly lowered his visor. He felt the old familiar ache in his chest, the one he kept locked behind walls of cynicism and work. Maya. Maya had been this size. Maya had hidden in cabinets just like this when the storms came. "Hey," Noah said softly. The girl jerked her head up. Her eyes were enormous violet irises, with no whites swirling like nebulas. She did not scream. She did not scramble away. She looked at him with a terrifying ancient solemnity. "You are the Earthman," she said. Her voice was high, but devoid of the childish cadence he expected. It was flat factual. I am Noah, he corrected, keeping his hands visible. You are not supposed to be down here, kid. It is dangerous. The resonance waves can boil your blood if you touch the wrong conduit. I know, she said. She held up the dead wire. It stopped singing. I wanted to make it start again, but it stays quiet. Noah edged closer. He saw the insignia on her collar, the crescent moon and star. Royalty. Great. He was currently trespassing in a restricted zone with a member of the ruling family. It is dead, little one, Noah said gently. Give it here. I can splice it. She shook her head. It is not broken. It is sad. The hushwake touched it. Noah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the atmospheric regulators. Hushwake. The word that everyone whispered, but no one shouted. The silent wave. The phenomenon that was slowly eating the edges of the Orolith Dominion, swallowing sound and color and memory. The hushwake is a myth for ghost stories, Noah lied. He moved within arm's reach. The girl looked at him, and for a second, her composure cracked. He saw the terrified child beneath the alien princess. If it is a myth, why does my mother cry when she thinks the walls are thick enough? Noah stopped. He looked at the girl, really looked at her. She was lonely. A crushing, deep-sea pressure of loneliness radiated off her. What is your name? He asked. Oria. Okay, Oria. I am going to check the readings on that wire. Is that okay? She hesitated, then extended her hand. Noah raised his resonance meter. It was a bulky handheld device designed to visualize sound waves. He pointed it at the wire in her hand, but the sensor swept over her arm. The screen lit up. Noah stared at the display. It was not showing the standard biorhythm of an Orolithian. It was showing a chaotic, jagged spike of trauma and resonance. Two distinct patterns fighting each other. One was alien. The other, looked exactly like the interference pattern Noah had seen on the monitors 10 years ago. The day the resonance therapy chamber failed. The day Maya died. His heart hammered against his ribs. Impossible. You, Noah breathed. What are you? Oria tilted her head. She reached out with her free hand and touched the dirty fabric of his sleeve. You fix things. You are the engineer. Yes, Noah rasped. Human, she asked, her voice, dropping to a whisper that echoed louder than the machinery. Can you fix sadness? The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Before Noah could answer, before he could process the impossible reading on his screen, the comms in his ear exploded. Noah! Rosa shouted. Get out of there! The Royal Guard is sweeping the lower levels. They lost the princess. If they find you with her, they will not ask questions. They will just vent the airlock. Noah looked at Oria. We have to go. I do not want to go back, she said, clutching the dead wire tighter. It is cold up there. Everyone is loud, but nobody says anything. I know, Noah said, surprising himself. Come on. He did not wait for permission. He scooped her up. She was light shockingly, so as if her bones were made of the same hollow glass as the palace. She buried her face in his shoulder, smelling of expensive perfume and ozone. For a second, just 1 second, Noah closed his eyes and pretended it was 10 years ago. Then he opened them, his face hardening into stone. The grand hall of the Aurora Vault was a masterpiece of intimidation. The ceiling was a dome of transparent diamond, showcasing the violet and gold swirls of the nebula outside. The floor was polished obsidian, reflecting the floating dignitaries like ghosts. Queen Melis sat on the sun throne, a construct of levitating gold shards. She was young to be a widow, young to be a queen, and far too young to look as tired as she did. She wore a gown of weaving light that changed color with her mood. Currently, it was a stoic, iron gray. The council recognizes Chancellor Sorn, the herald announced. Sorn glided forward. He was a tall man, his skin the color of polished slate, his movements fluid and predatory. He did not walk. He flowed. Your Majesty, Sorn said, his voice smooth as oil. We cannot delay the selection any longer. The Hushwake has been sighted in the 12th quadrant. We need a unifier. Someone to stand beside the throne and show the people strength. Emotion is a luxury we can no longer afford. Malus gripped the arms of her throne. Emotion powers the choir lattice chancellor. Without it, the city falls. Controlled emotion, Sorn corrected. Discipline, order. Not this messy sentimentality that seems to plague your administration. Rhea Calder, standing to the queen's left, cleared her throat. She was the royal archivist, a woman with wild hair and ink-stained fingers who looked perpetually late for a meeting. With all due respect, Chancellor, the last time we tried pure logic to run the grid, the sewage recycling plant reversed its flow. I am still washing the smell out of my ceremonial robes. A few courtiers stifled giggles. Sorn did not smile. We need a partner for the throne who understands sacrifice, Sorn pressed, ignoring Rhea. Someone who is willing to cut away the dead weight to save the ship. And I suppose you are volunteering, Malus asked, her voice cold. I serve only the Dominion, Sorn bowed. But if the burden must be carried, suddenly, the ambient hum of the hall died. The lights flickered. The vast vaulted room plunged into a terrifying semi-darkness. The choir lattice had skipped a beat. A door at the far end of the hall hissed open. Noah Mercer stumbled in, shoved forward by two royal guards. He looked like a wreck. His jumpsuit was covered in grease. His hair was matted with sweat, and he was blinking against the sudden brightness as the emergency lights flared on. He stood there, a smear of dirt, in a room of pristine perfection. The engineer found in Sector 7, my queen, the guard captain announced. He claims to have stabilized the dissonance. Malus looked down at him. Her heart skipped a beat. It was him. The man from the file. The man from the project she had tried so hard to forget. Report, she commanded, her voice trembling slightly. Noah straightened up, wiping his hands on his pants. He looked around the room, seeing the sneering faces of the nobility, the cold calculation of Sorn, and the terrified exhaustion of the queen. He felt small, but he also felt angry. Your foundation is rotting, Noah said, his voice rough. You are pushing the lattice too hard. It is not a machine you can whip into working faster. It is vibrating with anxiety. If you do not lower the output demand by 10%, you are going to be swimming in the clouds by tomorrow morning. Insolence, Sorn snapped. A mechanic daring to lecture the High Council. A mechanic who knows that sound does not lie, Noah shot back. People lie. Vibration does not. The doors burst open again. This time, it was not a prisoner. It was a blur of motion. Princess Aurea sprinted past the guards. She was fast-fueled by the desperate energy of a child who had made a decision. The courtiers gasped, stepping back as if she were contagious. Aurea, Queen Malus, stood up, her gray dress flaring into a panicked white. Aurea did not stop for her mother. She did not stop for Sorn. She ran straight toward the dirty, disheveled man standing in the center of the room. Noah turned, his eyes widening. Kid, no. Aurea didn't listen. She launched herself at him. Noah instinctively dropped to one knee to catch her, bracing for impact. She scrambled up his legs, climbing him like a tree, until she was perched on his thigh, her arms throwing a stranglehold around his neck. She buried her face in the crook of his shoulder, right where the grease stain was darkest. The silence in the great hall was absolute. It was heavy, suffocating, and total. Then Aurea lifted her head. She looked at the queen, then at Sorn, and finally settled her gaze on the frozen crowd. Can I sit on your lap, Earthfather? She asked. Her voice was not a whisper. It rang out, amplified by the perfect acoustics of the room. Earthfather. The word hit the room like a grenade. A collective gasp ripped through the crowd. The nobility looked horrified, clutching their pearls and data pads. To call a human father, a human, a species known for its chaotic short lifespan, was blasphemy. It was worse than blasphemy. It was biological treason. Noah, felt his blood turn to ice. He stopped breathing. The sensation of her small weight on his leg, the smell of her hair, the desperate grip of her arms, superimposed perfectly over the memory of Maya. "Daddy, hold me." The thunder is loud. He could not move. He could not push her away. He could only stare at the queen. Queen Melis was frozen on the steps of the throne. Her hand was pressed to her mouth. She was not looking at Aurea with anger. She was looking at Noah with a devastation so raw it felt like a physical wound. She knew. She saw the resemblance. She saw the connection. Chancellor Sorn recovered first. His eyes narrowed, a shark smelling blood in the water. "Seize him," Sorn roared, pointing a long, pale finger at Noah. "He has contaminated the princess. He has used some primitive hypnotic resonance on her. This is an assault on the bloodline." The guards surged forward, their shock staves crackling. "No!" Aurea screamed. She did not let go. She tightened her grip on Noah, shielding him with her small body. "Do not touch him." "Aurea, get down," Noah whispered, his voice shaking. "You are going to get us both killed." "They are already killing us," Aurea shouted back, turning to face Sorn. "You want to take him away? Why, because he listens." "He is a parasite child," Sorn sneered, stepping closer, his towering form casting a shadow over Noah and the girl. "He is a dirty, broken human mechanic who has dared to touch royalty. He is polluting your mind with low-frequency filth." Aurea glared at Sorn. Her eyes flashed with a dangerous, bioluminescent purple. "If you are so smart," Aurea said, her voice cutting through the air like a laser, "and if he is so dirty, then why is the palace still falling?" The question hung there, simple, brutal, unanswerable. "Why?" Aurea demanded again. "You talk and talk and talk. But the floor is still shaking. He fixed the wire. You just broke it." The silence that followed was different. It was the silence of shame. The technicians in the back of the room exchanged glances. The nobles shifted uncomfortably. Sorn's face darkened. "Take the girl. Throw the man in the containment brig. We will dissect his neural pathways to see what he did to her." Two guards grabbed Noah's arms, hauling him up. Aurea was ripped away, screaming, kicking the air. "Wait." The voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of a collapsing star. Queen Melis descended the stairs. She walked slowly, her dress shifting from white to a deep, regal crimson. She walked past Sorn, past the guards, until she stood 2 feet from Noah. She looked into his eyes. She saw the fear there, but not for himself. She saw the fear for Aurea. "Let him go," Melis said. "Your Majesty," Sorn protested, his voice dripping with condescension. "This man has violated protocol. He has touched the air. By law, he must be purged." "By law," Melis said, her voice gathering strength. "A challenge of connection cannot be dismissed if it is invoked by the air." "Air," Sorn scoffed. "She is a child. She does not know what she is saying. She called him Earthfather. It is nonsense." "Is it?" Melis turned to the court. "The Earthfather right. Article 7002 of the Dominion Charter. If a potential suitor can prove a harmonic resonance with the air stronger than the natural bond, they are granted the right to stand trial for the position of consort." Noah's jaw dropped. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, I am a mechanic. I am not a suitor. I just want to fix the pipes." "Silence," Melis commanded, though her eyes softened for a fraction of a second. "Chancellor Sorn, you demanded a selection. You demanded we find someone to stand against the Hushwake. My daughter has made a choice. Do you deny the princess her right to test that choice?" Sorn looked at Noah, then at Aurea, and finally at the queen. A cruel smile played on his lips. He saw an opportunity. If Noah failed the test, which he surely would, it would humiliate the queen and prove that humans were incompatible trash. It would hand Sorn the throne on a platter. "Very well," Sorn bowed low. "Let us invoke the right. Let the human try to sing with the stars. And when his mind breaks under the pressure, we will sweep up the pieces. Malus turned back to Noah. You are under royal protection, Noah Mercer, until the rite is concluded. This is insane, Noah hissed. I cannot be a prince. I cannot even pay my rent on time. You do not need to be a prince, Malus whispered, so only he could hear. You just need to be the father she thinks you are. Do not make me regret this. She turned and walked back to the throne. Take him to the preparation chambers and give him a bath. He smells like grease and lilacs. As the guards escorted a bewildered Noah out of the hall, and Aurea was gently ushered away by a stunned Rhea Calder, the court dissolved into chaos. But outside the Diamond Dome, unnoticed by the squabbling nobles, the horizon changed. Far in the distance across the ocean of glowing clouds, a line of darkness appeared. It was not a storm. It was a void, a complete absence of light, reflection, and sound. It was the Hushwake, and it was not in the 12th quadrant anymore. It was 10 miles away, and it was moving against the wind. The containment suite they assigned to Noah was larger than his entire apartment back in the Neo-Seattle slums. It had walls made of translucent pearl that hummed with a low B-flat note designed to encourage relaxation. It was not working. Noah paced the length of the room, his boots making no sound on the soft organic floor. He felt like a specimen in a jar waiting to be shaken. The door chimed a polite melodic trill and slid open. Rhea Calder walked in. The royal archivist looked even more disheveled than she had in the throne room. Her robes were a chaotic layering of silks, and she was carrying a datapad that seemed to be overheating. She looked Noah up and down, her expression somewhere between amusement and pity. Congratulations, Rhea said, her voice dry. You have just been promoted from a man with a screwdriver to a contender for the Golden Throne. That is quite the career trajectory. Usually people have to assassinate at least 3 dukes to get this kind of attention. Noah stopped pacing. I do not want the attention. I want to go back to the sub-basement and finish welding the conduit. That is adorable, Rhea said, tapping her datapad. But you are currently the subject of a royal decree. If you go back to the sub-basement now, Chancellor Sorn will have you arrested for abandoning a sacred rite. And then, he will have you executed for touching the princess. And then, just to be thorough, he will probably bill your next of kin for the laser charge. Noah ran a hand through his still damp hair. They had forced him through a sonic shower that vibrated the dirt out of his pores, leaving his skin tingling and raw. This is insane. I am a human engineer. I am 40 years old. I have debt. I have bad knees. I am not a father figure for alien royalty. Tell that to the princess, Rhea said, her tone softening slightly. She has not spoken a word to anyone since they separated you. She is sitting in her chambers, staring at the wall, waiting for her Earth father. The term made Noah flinch. Why did she call me that? Rhea sighed, sitting on the edge of a floating table. Because Aurea is special, and because you are the first person in 5 years who looked at her and saw a child, not a political asset or a biological anomaly. To the court, she is the heir. To Sorn, she is a variable. To you, she was just a kid holding a broken wire. Noah looked away, staring at the shifting clouds outside the pearl walls. I just did what anyone would do. No, Rhea corrected him. You did what a parent would do. And in the Oralith Dominion, that is a rare frequency. She stood up. Come on. The Queen wants to see you. And before you ask no, you do not have a choice. This is the right of harmonic proof. You are in it until you win, or until the echo loom turns your brain into soup. The Queen's private solar was a sanctuary of light. Unlike the cold grandeur of the throne room, this space felt lived in. There were cushions scattered on the floor, and the air smelled of warm spices, not ozone. But the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Queen Malus stood by the window, her back to them. Aurea was sitting on a rug, methodically arranging colored crystals in a pattern that looked disturbingly like a schematic for a warp drive. When Noah entered, Oria's head snapped up. Her large violet eyes widened, and the dull gray of her skin flushed with a sudden soft pink luminescence. "Noah," she said. It was a statement of relief. "Princess." Noah nodded, keeping his distance. Malus turned. She had shed the armor-like ceremonial gown for a simpler tunic of woven white fabric. She looked younger, but the exhaustion etched around her eyes was profound. "Thank you for coming," Malus said. Her voice was steady, but Noah's acoustic training picked up the micro-tremors in her vocal cords. She was terrified. "I was told I did not have a choice," Noah said bluntly. "We rarely do," Malus replied. She gestured to the crystals Oria was playing with. "The rite of harmonic proof is not a ceremony, Noah. It is a biological interrogation. The echo loom is a symbiotic organism that the first ancestors brought from the core worlds. It connects to the nervous systems of two individuals and attempts to weave them into a single, harmonic output." "And if it fails?" Noah asked. "If the resonance is dissonant," Malus said, looking him in the eye, "the feedback loop causes massive cerebral hemorrhaging. You die. Oria would be lobotomized." Noah felt the blood drain from his face. "And you agreed to this?" "I had to." Malus stepped forward, her composure cracking. "Sorn was going to take her to the Silence Conservatory. He claims she is infected, that she is the reason the Hushwake is accelerating. He wants to purify her. The rite was the only legal stall I had. It buys us 3 days." "3 days to do what?" Noah asked. "Prepare for a brain hemorrhage." 3 days to prove them wrong," Oria said. She stood up, clutching a blue crystal. She walked over to Noah, stopping just out of reaching distance. "We match, Noah. I saw it on your machine. The waves danced together." Noah looked down at her. "Kid, that machine was reading trauma. It wasn't reading a family bond. It was reading two people who are broken in similar ways." "Maybe," Oria said, tilting her head. "But you looked at me. When the guards came, you put your body in front of mine. You were shaking, but you did not move." She took a step closer. "I chose you because you looked at me like I am real. Not a ghost. Not a princess. Real." The words hit Noah hard. He remembered the feeling of Maya's small hand in his, the trust that he would fix everything even when he couldn't. "I am not a good man, Oria," Noah said hoarsely. "I couldn't save my own daughter." "Then save me," Oria whispered. The room went silent. Even Malus held her breath. Noah looked at the queen, then at the little girl who was staring at him with an intensity that burned. He let out a long, ragged sigh, rubbing the back of his neck. "Okay," Noah said. "Okay. What do we have to do?" The training began 2 hours later. It was not physical training. It was sensory calibration. They sat in the center of the solar, cross-legged on the floor. Rhea Calder sat in the corner, ostensibly monitoring the session, but actually eating a bag of dried starfruit and offering commentary. "The choir lattice is not just background noise," Noah explained, his voice low and focused. "It is a language. Every vibration tells you the structural integrity of the section it comes from." He tapped a tuning fork against the floor. "Listen, not with your ears, with your bones." "What do you hear?" Oria closed her eyes, her brow furrowed. "It is humming, a C-sharp." "Deeper," Noah urged. "Ignore the note. Listen to the texture. Is it smooth? Is it grainy?" Oria was silent for a long moment. "It is scratchy, like sand in a bearing." "Good," Noah said. "That is the tension in the south struts. Now push your awareness out. Find the Hushwake." Oria flinched. "I do not want to." "You have to," Noah said gently. "If we are going to survive the echo loom, we have to know where the silence is, so we don't let it in." She took a deep breath. Her skin shimmered from pink to a pale, fearful lavender. "It is cold." It tastes like metal. It is near the kitchens. Noah nodded. Okay. Now pull back. Anchor yourself to my voice. They worked for hours. Noah taught her how to isolate frequencies, how to find the rhythm in chaos. In return, Aurea taught him the language of light. You humans are so blind, Aurea said, opening her eyes. You only listen to words. Words are easy to fake. Skin cannot lie. She pointed to her own arm. Watch. She thought of something Noah guessed it was something funny, and her skin rippled with a warm golden orange. This is joy, or amusement. Then the color shifted to a muddy, dull green. This is disgust, like when Chancellor Sorn smiles. Noah chuckled. Okay, what is blue? Truth, Aurea said. Deep cobalt blue. It is the color of the lattice when it is healthy. And red. She hesitated. Red is love, but also anger. They are close neighbors. And the gray? Noah asked, thinking of the strands he had seen earlier. Aurea's face fell. Gray is nothing. Gray is the hush. Later that afternoon, as they walked through the corridors toward the dining hall, Noah saw what she meant. A servant passed them carrying a tray of silver goblets. The man was an Auralithian, tall and elegant, but his skin was a flat, matte slate gray. He did not bow. He did not blink. He just moved, fluid and efficient, but utterly vacant. That is what the hushwake does, Aurea whispered, hiding behind Noah's arm. It does not kill you. It just takes the part of you that cares. He will serve drinks perfectly for another 10 years, but he will never taste the wine again. He will never miss anyone. Noah felt a chill crawl up his spine. It was worse than death. It was a perfectly polite, functional purgatory. A society of hollow shells maintaining a city that no longer had a soul. We are going to fix this, Noah said, his hand tightening around hers. Aurea looked up at him. Her skin flashed a brief, brilliant blue. Chancellor Sorn stood in his office looking out at the endless clouds. The office was dark, lit only by the bioluminescent bacteria in the wall tanks. The preparations are complete, Sorn asked, not turning around. General Kale, the commander of the Royal Guard, stood at attention. Yes, Chancellor. The Echo Loom has been moved from the stasis vaults. It is restless. Good, Sorn said. And the engineer? He is training with the princess. The reports say they are achieving basic harmonic synchronization. Sorn turned a thin smile on his lips. Basic synchronization will not be enough. The loom demands absolute emotional transparency. A human mind is a clutter of contradictions. He will fail. And when he screams, the council will see that emotion is a weakness. And if he succeeds, Kale asked, the loom is powerful. If they bond with it. If they bond with it, Sorn interrupted, his eyes gleaming. Then we will have a weapon that can broadcast commands directly into the nervous system of every citizen in the Dominion. Do you think I care about the throne, Kale? The throne is a chair. The loom is a voice of God. Sorn walked over to a map of the city. He traced the line where the hushwake was advancing. Let the queen have her romance. Let the human play father. In 2 days, I will either have a martyr to justify martial law, or a living amplifier to enforce absolute order. Either way, the chaos ends. Night fell over the Aurora Vault. The clouds below ceased their glowing, turning into a deep, bruising purple ocean. Noah could not sleep. The silence of the room was too loud. He wandered out onto the balcony that connected his suite to the royal gardens. He found Queen Melis there. She was leaning against the railing, staring out at the void. Her skin was dim, the bioluminescence faded to a faint, ghostly white. She looked like a statue made of salt. You should be resting, Noah said softly. Melis did not jump. She turned her head slowly. I do not sleep much these days. The silence gets louder at night. Noah moved to stand beside her. I saw a servant today. One of the gray ones. One of the hushed, Melis corrected. Yes. It started in the lower districts. Now it is in the palace. It takes the grief first, then the joy, then the love. Eventually, you are just efficient. She looked at her hands. Sometimes I envy them. It must be peaceful. To not worry if your daughter is going to die. To not feel the guilt of 1,000 years of history pressing on your neck. Peaceful is not the word I would use, Noah said. Empty. I have been there, Malus. After my daughter died, I spent 2 years trying to turn myself off. I worked 20 hours a day. I didn't talk to anyone. I thought if I just became a machine, the pain would stop. Malus turned to face him fully. Did it? No, Noah said. It just waited. Pain is patient. Love is too. Malus let out a bitter laugh. In this court, love is a liability. Soren calls it a chaotic variable. He says we need to evolve past it to survive the Hushwake. Soren is wrong, Noah said firmly. The Hushwake feeds on apathy. It eats the connections between people. If you stop loving, you are just serving yourself up on a platter. Malus looked at him, her eyes searching his face. You speak like a heretic. Here love is a private thing. To show it is weak, to fight for it is treason. Then maybe you need more rebels, Noah said. The wind whipped Malus's hair across her face. She reached up to brush it away, and her fingers brushed against Noah's hand on the railing. A spark, literal and electric, jumped between them. For a moment her skin flared a sudden shocking crimson of desire and anger before fading back to white. You are a dangerous man, Noah Mercer, she whispered. You make me want to scream. Screaming is good, Noah said. Screaming proves you are still here. He looked closely at her. There was a patch on her neck just below the jawline that was not white or pink. It was gray. A small, dull patch of Hushwake infection. She saw him looking. She pulled her collar up. It is spreading, she admitted, her voice trembling. I have been holding the lattice together with my own will for too long. I am leaking. We will stop it, Noah promised. The right. If we win, we can use the loom to push it back. If you win, Malus said sadly. Go to sleep, Earthfather. Tomorrow you have to sing for your life. She turned and fled back into her chambers, leaving Noah alone with the wind and the terrifying realization that the Queen was already dying. The morning of the rite arrived with a fanfare of trumpets that sounded more like a funeral dirge. Noah was in the preparation chamber, trying to zip up the ceremonial tunic Rhea had thrown at him. It was white stiff and had far too many clasps. Hold still, a gruff voice said. Noah spun around. It was Rosa Vale, his supervising contractor. She was holding a small metallic disc. Rosa, Noah blinked. How did you get in here? I told the guards I was your spiritual advisor, Rosa grunted, slapping his hand away and fastening the tunic herself. They are surprisingly gullible if you use big words like transcendental harmonic alignment. She finished the clasp and stepped back. Listen to me. Soren is going to cheat. I assumed that, Noah said. No, I mean he is going to jam the frequency, Rosa said. She pressed the metallic disc into Noah's hand. This is a subharmonic stabilizer. I pulled it from the main drive of a freighter. It is illegal dangerous, and it might burn a hole in your pocket. But if Soren tries to flood the chamber with dissonance, this will create a 3-second buffer for you to resync. Noah looked at the device. Rosa, thank you. I thought you hated training newbies. I do, Rosa said, checking the corridor. But I hate paperwork more. And filling out the casualty forms for a dead Earthfather sounds like a nightmare. Don't die, Noah. It is bad for business. She vanished as quickly as she had appeared. The doors opened. Aurea was there, flanked by guards. She wore a dress of woven glass fibers that refracted the light into rainbows. She looked tiny. Ready? Noah asked, hiding the device in his palm. Aurea looked up at him. She reached out and took his hand. Her grip was iron tight. I am scared, she whispered. Me too, Noah said. Being scared means you are paying attention. Oria frowned slightly, looking at him with a strange expression. That is what the Whisper Keeper used to say. Noah froze. Who? The Whisper Keeper, Oria said innocently. In my dreams. He tells me stories when the silence gets too loud. He sounds like you, but older. A cold shiver went through Noah. The Whisper Keeper. It was the name of the hero in the bedtime stories he used to invent for Maya. Stories about a man who caught secrets in a net, so they wouldn't be forgotten. He hadn't told those stories to anyone in 10 years. How could she know that name before he could ask the trumpets blasted again? The guards stepped forward. It is time, the captain said. The grand hall had been transformed. The floating throne was gone. In its place, in the center of the obsidian floor, stood the echo loom. It was magnificent and terrifying. It looked like a massive heart made of crystal and muscle suspended in a cage of golden rings. It pulsed with a slow, rhythmic beat that shook the floor. Veins of liquid light pumped through it. It had no eyes, but it felt like it was watching everything. The court was packed. Thousands of Orolithians stood in the galleries, their skin glowing with a mixture of anticipation and fear, yellow and orange. Chancellor Sorn stood on a raised dais, looking down like a vulture. Queen Melis sat on a temporary throne, her face a mask of stoic resolve. The right of harmonic proof, Sorn announced, his voice amplified by the architecture. The human Noah Mercer claims the ancient title of Earthfather. He claims a bond of soul and sound with the air. Let the loom judge the truth. Noah and Oria stepped into the circle of golden rings. The loom's pulse sped up. Thump, 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 thump. It was loud, physical. Place your hands on the interface, Sorn commanded. Noah knelt down so he was eye level with Oria. Just like we practiced, he whispered. Blue for truth. Red for love. Ignore the gray. Oria nodded. Together they reached out and touched the warm, vibrating surface of the echo loom. The world vanished. It was not like sound. It was like falling into a hurricane of pure feeling. Noah gasped as his mind was yanked out of his body. He was floating in a void of swirling colors. He felt Oria, not her hand, but her essence. She felt like a small, frightened bird made of glass. Noah. Her voice echoed in his head. I am here, Noah thought back. Focus on me. Outside in the hall, the loom began to glow. A low hum started to build, rising in pitch. Suddenly, a screech of feedback tore through the connection. It was sharp, jagged, and malicious. Sorn was jamming them. Noah felt his mind begin to fracture. The pain was blinding white-hot needles, stabbing into his frontal lobe. Beside him in the physical world, Oria screamed. Hold on, Noah mentally shouted. He remembered the device in his pocket. He couldn't use his hands, but he could focus his will. He visualized the stabilizer. He visualized the frequency Rosa had told him about. He pushed back against the dissonance. You are not taking her. The feedback cleared for a second. In that clear space, the loom opened its throat. It didn't scream. It didn't sing. It sighed. A wave of pure, harmonious sound washed over the entire palace. It was the sound of a parent exhaling after a long day. The sound of safety. The floor of the grand hall vibrated. The glass dome overhead rang like a bell. And in the center of the swirl, Noah saw something. A memory that wasn't his. He saw a laboratory. He saw a young Queen Melis arguing with a human scientist. He saw a test tube containing a swirling nebulous light. And he saw the label on the scientist's data pad. Project Revival, Neural Mapping of Subject M. Mercer. Noah's heart stopped. M. Mercer. Maya. The connection snapped. The loom flared with a blinding white light, throwing Noah and Oria back. They landed hard on the obsidian floor. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, the loom began to change color. It shifted from white to blue, then to red, then to a deep, resonant gold. It was singing. A complex, beautiful melody that wove two distinct themes together. the heavy, grounded rhythm of earth, and the soaring, ethereal melody of Orlith. Sorn gripped the railing of his dais, his knuckles white. Impossible! Queen Melis stood up, tears streaming down her face. Her skin was glowing so bright, it hurt to look at her. Noah pushed himself up on shaking arms. He looked at Oria. She was sitting up, rubbing her head, but she was smiling. "We were loud," she said, her voice echoing in the silent hall. "Yeah," Noah panted, looking at the queen, his mind reeling with the image he had seen in the vision. "We were very loud." But before the crowd could erupt, before the queen could descend, the light in the room changed. The golden glow of the loom was suddenly cut by a shadow. The diamond dome above them darkened. The clouds outside had stopped moving. A crack appeared in the sky. Not a crack in the glass, but a crack in reality. A vertical line of absolute nothingness slicing through the nebula. The hushwake had arrived, and for the first time in history, the palace didn't just shake. It groaned, a sound of metal and light twisting in agony. "The barrier," a guard screamed. "The acoustic barrier is failing." Sorn pointed a trembling finger at Noah. "He did this. His chaotic emotions shattered the shield. Arrest him." "No!" Melis shouted, running down the steps. But the panic had already set in. The courtiers were screaming, their skin flashing wild, terrified colors. The guards surged forward. Noah scrambled to his feet, grabbing Oria. "Run," he said. This time Oria didn't argue. She grabbed his hand, and together they sprinted toward the side exit, just as the first wave of unnatural silence crashed against the hull of the Aurora vault. The contact with the echo loom was not cold, as Noah had expected. It was wet. It felt like plunging his hand into a bucket of warm mercury that possessed a pulse. The surface of the living crystal yielded under his palm, suctioning against his skin with a biological eagerness that made his stomach turn. Beside him, Princess Oria did not flinch. Her small hand was buried deep in the interface, her eyes wide and violet, staring at nothing. "Do not fight it," Noah whispered, though he wasn't sure if his voice was working anymore. "Just let it listen." Then the world turned inside out. It was not a visual transition. It was acoustic. The ambient hum of the grand hall, the shuffling of feet, the whisper of silk, the distant drone of the ventilation vanished instantly. In its place was a roaring silence that felt like falling from a great height. Noah was no longer standing on the obsidian floor. He was standing inside a melody. He looked down at his body, but he did not have one. He was a frequency, a rough, jagged waveform of grief and stubbornness, vibrating in a void of indigo light. And he was not alone. "Hello." The thought did not come from him. It rippled through the indigo like a stone dropped in a pond. Noah turned his consciousness toward the source. He saw a shape. It was small, compressed and terrified. It looked like a knot of white light pulled so tight it was almost invisible. Oria Noah projected the thought. The knot tightened. "Do not look at me. I am too big. I take up too much room." Noah felt his heart break, even without a physical heart. He stepped or floated closer to the knot of light. He wasn't seeing the princess now. He wasn't seeing the heir to the Orlith dominion. He was seeing her soul. And her soul was trying to disappear. He saw images flashing within the light. Not a grand palace, but a closet. A small, dark space behind a bulkhead where a very young Oria sat with her knees pulled to her chest, holding her breath. She was counting seconds. 1, 2, 3. Trying to be as quiet as the dust motes floating in the air. "Why are you hiding?" Noah asked, his mental voice gentle. "If I am quiet," the thought voice whispered, "maybe the sadness will not find me. Mother says the noise attracts the bad things, so I practice being nothing." It was a child's logic, brutal and flawless. If she didn't exist, she couldn't be hurt, and she couldn't hurt the crumbling empire her mother was trying to hold together. Noah reached out. He didn't have hands, but he wrapped his frequency around her tightly wound knot. "You do not have to be nothing, kid. You are allowed to be loud. The knot shivered. But the hushwake. To hell with the hushwake, Noah pushed back, letting his own anger bleed into the connection. Silence is the enemy. Noise is life. Scream if you have to. The connection flipped. Suddenly, Noah wasn't the observer. He was the observed. He felt Oria's consciousness pushing into him, curious and innocent. She walked through his mind like a visitor in a museum. She bypassed the walls he had built, the cynicism, the sarcasm, the technical jargon. She went straight to the basement. No, Noah panicked. Not there. But he couldn't stop her. The echo loom demanded truth, and truth was not something you could lock away. Oria stood in the memory. It was a sterile white room. The air smelled of antiseptic and ozone. A man younger, with less gray in his beard and more light in his eyes, was adjusting a headset on a small human girl. Maya. She was 7. She had missing front teeth and a laugh that sounded like a hiccup. "Dad," the memory. Maya said, swinging her legs on the exam table. "Is it going to hurt?" "No, sweetie," the memory, Noah said. He was smiling, but Noah the observer could taste the ambition in that smile. The arrogance. He thought he was curing neural dissonance. He thought he was saving the world. "It will feel like a tickle. Just a little hum." "Okay," Maya said. She looked at the machine, then back at him. "Dad, make it gentle." "I will," memory, Noah promised. He flipped the switch. The memory dissolved into a blinding flash of red warning lights and the sound of a scream that had echoed in Noah's nightmares for 3,650 days. In the void of the echo loom, the current Noah screamed again. He tried to tear himself away. He couldn't bear for Oria to see the failure, the moment he broke his own life. But Oria didn't pull away. The knot of white light unraveled. It expanded, turning into a soft, warm blanket of luminescence. She wrapped herself around the jagged, painful spikes of his memory. She didn't try to fix it. She didn't judge it. She just sat with it. She was brave. Oria's voice came through clear and strong. Noah stopped fighting. She was. "And she trusted you," Oria said. "She still trusts you. The echo does not leave just because the sound stops." The image of Maya faded, but the feeling of her small hand remained. Oria was holding it. Human kids are loud, Oria observed, and there was a ripple of amusement in the psychic link. "I like that. It is colorful." The two frequencies, the jagged indigo of the grieving father and the compressed white of the lonely princess, collided. But they didn't crash. They wove together. They spiraled, climbing higher and higher, creating a new sound, a harmony. It was a chord of absolute acceptance. Noah gasped, his lungs sucking in air, as if he had been underwater for an hour. He fell forward, catching himself on the rim of the echo loom. His hands were shaking violently. Beside him, Oria stumbled, but she didn't fall. She looked like she had just woken up from a vivid dream. The silence in the grand hall was profound. But the echo loom was not silent. The massive biological crystal was glowing with a blinding golden intensity. And it was singing. A pure, resonant major chord that vibrated in the teeth of every person in the room. It was the sound of a structural lock clicking into place. The golden rings surrounding the loom began to spin faster and faster, blurring into a halo of light. "Resonance confirmed," a technician's voice cracked over the monitor, sounding terrified. "Harmonic integrity is 100%. No, it is off the scale. It is a perfect fifth." Noah looked up, sweat stinging his eyes. He looked at Queen Melis. She had risen from her seat. Her hands were pressed over her heart, and her skin was flashing a chaotic storm of colors, shock white, joyful gold, and a deep, mournful blue. She was looking at him, and for the first time, she wasn't looking at a mechanic. She was looking at a partner. It accepted him," someone whispered in the crowd. "The Earth Father," another voice murmured. But not everyone was looking at the light. Chancellor Sorn stood on his dais, his face a mask of frozen calculation. He did not look impressed. He looked hungry. He was staring at the glowing loom, not as a religious artifact, but as a battery he had just discovered how to charge. "Remarkable," Soren said, though his voice was barely audible over the humming of the crystal. "The weapon works." Suddenly, the floor beneath them lurched. It wasn't the gentle sway of the floating city. It was a violent shudder like a ship hitting a reef. The golden light of the loom flickered. The singing note warped, twisting into a screech. "What is happening?" Oria cried out, grabbing Noah's arm. Noah looked up at the diamond dome. The beautiful nebula sky was gone. Pressing against the glass was a wall of absolute darkness. It wasn't night. It was the absence of anything. It was a void so complete, it hurt the eyes to look at it. The hushwake. It had lunged forward. "The perimeter field is buckling," General Kale shouted. "The silence is physically pressing against the hull." The crowd erupted into panic. Nobles in their finery began to scramble over each other, their dignity forgotten. "It is the human," a noble shouted, pointing a trembling finger at Noah. "He brought the chaos," the loom called the darkness. "He saved us," a technician yelled back. "Look at the readings. The loom is the only thing holding the shield up." The room was split down the middle. Half saw a savior, half saw a virus. Noah ignored them. He grabbed Oria's shoulders. "Stay with me. Do not look at the dark." "Silence!" The voice cracked like a whip. Queen Melis descended the steps of the dais. She didn't walk. She marched. Her gown of light flared into a blinding, furious white. She stopped in the center of the room between the panic and the loom. "Look at me!" she commanded. And they did. Because she was the queen, and for a moment she shone brighter than the city itself. "We have spent 50 years building walls to keep the silence out," Melis said, her voice shaking with adrenaline. "We outlawed grief. We rationed love. We turned ourselves into machines because we thought feeling was a weakness." She pointed at Noah, who was still kneeling beside Oria. "This man just proved us wrong. He did not connect with the air through logic. He connected through pain, through loss, through the very things we are terrified to feel." She turned to the court, her eyes blazing. "We do not fear humans because they are chaotic," Melis declared, and her words rang off the crystal walls. "We fear them because they remind us of what we threw away. We are not afraid of dying. We are afraid that we no longer know how to love." The silence that followed this time was not empty. It was heavy with realization. Chancellor Soren slowly clapped his hands. 1, 2, 3. A slow, mocking rhythm. "A beautiful speech, Your Majesty," Soren said, descending from his perch. "Truly moving. But poetry does not reinforce structural integrity. The hushwake is here, and your experiment has destabilized the defense grid." He gestured to the guards. "Escort the princess to the secure bunker, and take the human to the holding cells until we can determine if he is a conduit or a casualty." "I am the queen," Melis shouted. "And I am the Chancellor of Defense during a planetary emergency," Soren countered smoothly. "Protocol Alpha 9 overrides royal decree when the integrity of the capital is at risk." He smiled at Noah. It was a smile that promised scalpels and microscopes. "Excellent show, Earthfather. Now the adults need to work." The holding cell was not the nice one with the pearl walls. It was a metal box in the security wing, smelling of rust and old fear. Noah sat on the bench, his head in his hands. He could still feel the phantom sensation of the echo loom, the overwhelming warmth of Oria's mind. "Nice speech she gave," a voice said from the shadows. Noah looked up. Rosa Vale was leaning against the force field door, picking her teeth with a sliver of plastic. "Rosa," Noah breathed. "Get me out of here. Soren is going to dissect me." "Working on it," Rosa said. "But we have a bigger problem. The city is listing. About 4 degrees to port. Someone cut the primary acoustic cables in Sector 12. "The hushwake?" Noah asked. "No," Rosa said grimly. Hushwake dissolves things. These cables were cut. With a plasma cutter. Precision work. This was sabotage, Noah. Noah stood up. Sorn. He is creating a crisis to justify taking control. Obviously, Rosa rolled her eyes. But here is the kicker. He didn't cut the cables himself. And the logs show the access codes used belong to the royal house. Noah frowned. Malus would never sink her own ship. Maybe not, Rosa said. But someone wants it to look like she did. Look, the power grid is fluctuating. I can loop the security feed for 30 seconds. You need to run. I can't leave Aurea, Noah said. Sorn took her. The kid is in the Silence Conservatory, Rosa said. It is the most secure room in the palace. Or it was until the power started failing. The lights in the corridor flickered and died. The force field hummed, then vanished. Go, Rosa hissed. I will try to keep the cameras blind. Do not die. I mean it. Noah didn't hesitate. He sprinted out of the cell, turning left toward the royal wing. The palace was in chaos. The tilt of the city was noticeable now. The floor was slanted at a steep angle. Noah had to run with one hand on the wall to keep from sliding. Alarms were blaring a rhythmic, dissonant pulse that made his teeth ache. He reached the corridor leading to the conservatory. It was empty. Suspiciously empty. Then he felt it. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in a single step. The sound of the alarms faded, not because they stopped, but because the air refused to carry the vibration. A hushed zone. A breach had opened here. The hushwake was leaking in. Noah held his breath. He knew that breathing the silence was dangerous. It dulled the mind. He saw the door to the conservatory ahead. It was sealed. Through the small observation window, he saw Aurea. She was curled up in the corner of the room. The air around her was gray and thick like heavy smoke. The bioluminescence of the plants in the room had gone dark. Aurea's skin was a dull, flat slate color. Her eyes were open but empty. She was fading. The silence was eating her. Noah hammered on the door panel. Aurea opened the door. No response. The electronic lock was dead. Damn it! Noah looked around. He needed to break the silence. He needed a vibration strong enough to shatter the suppression field inside. He grabbed a heavy metal fire extinguisher from the wall. He smashed it against the door. Clang. The sound died instantly. The silence swallowed it before it could echo. It wasn't working. Physical force wasn't enough. The lattice, Noah thought. It runs on emotion. Sound is just the carrier. He pressed his forehead against the cold glass. He closed his eyes. He thought of the moment in the loom. He thought of the little girl hiding in the closet. He needed to sing. Noah Mercer was not a singer. He had a voice like gravel in a blender. But he didn't need to be pitch perfect. He needed to be true. He started to hum, low in his throat, a vibration that started in his chest. He hummed the melody he used to hum for Maya when the thunderstorms rolled in off the Pacific. A simple, three-note lullaby. Safe. Here. Warm. He pushed the sound, not just with his breath but with his memory. He poured the feeling of the blanket, the hot cocoa, the smell of rain into the note. The glass against his forehead vibrated. Inside the room, the gray smoke swirled. Noah sang louder. The words were old and nonsensical. Rain comes down, washing the street. Sleep now, little bird, rest your feet. The gray fog recoiled. I didn't like the texture of the sound. It was too jagged, too human, too full of irrational hope. Aurea blinked. A tiny spark of pink appeared on her cheek. She lifted her head. She looked at the door. Noah, she whispered. Her voice was faint, but it was there. Come on, kid, Noah shouted, his voice cracking. Let me in. Aurea stood up. She walked through the gray sludge, pushing it aside like cobwebs. She reached the door and placed her hand on the manual override lever. She pulled. The door hissed open. Noah stumbled in, grabbing her before she could fall. I got you, he gasped. I got you. Aurea buried her face in his chest. That song, she murmured, her voice sounding drunk with exhaustion. It tastes like roasted nuts. And rain. She looked up at him, her eyes clearing. It tastes like home. Why does it taste like home, Noah? Noah froze. Roasted nuts. That was the smell of the street vendor outside his old apartment. Maya loved them. How could Oriya know that? We will talk later, Noah said, hoisting her up. We have to move. The whole city is tipping over. They scrambled out of the hushed zone, back into the chaotic noise of the corridor. As they turned the corner, they collided with a blur of white light. Oof! Noah skidded, nearly dropping Oriya. He looked up to see Queen Malus barefoot, her elaborate hair coming undone, holding a plasma rifle that looked far too big for her. Malus, Noah stared. I told the guards to go to hell, Malus said, breathless. She looked at Oriya. Is she hurt? She is cold, but she is back, Noah said. Good, Malus hefted the rifle. Because we are leaving. My shuttle is in the private hangar. It is the only way off this sinking chandelier. The floor gave a violent lurch. The angle increased. It was now like walking on a slide. Run! Noah yelled. They ran. It was a nightmare obstacle course. Furniture was sliding past them. The beautiful crystal chandeliers were swinging wildly, crashing into the walls. They reached the grand staircase. It was tilted at a 45-degree angle. We can't walk down that, Malus shouted, over the roar of twisting metal. Then we slide, Noah yelled. He sat down on the polished marble. Oriya on my lap, Malus grabbed my belt. This is undignified, Malus yelled, but she sat down behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Gravity does not care about dignity, Noah pushed off. They slid. It was terrifying and ridiculous. They rocketed down the grand staircase of the Orlith Dominion, screaming like children on a playground slide. They banked off the railing, spun around, and shot out across the polished floor of the atrium, crashing into a pile of velvet cushions that had slid from the lounges. They landed in a heap of limbs and adrenaline. For a second, there was silence. Then Noah started to laugh. It was a hysterical, breathless bark of laughter. Oriya started giggling. Malus looked at them horrified, and then a snort escaped her. Then another. She threw her head back and laughed a loud, unroyal sound. We looked, Malus gasped, wiping tears from her eyes. We looked like idiots. We are alive idiots, Noah grinned, sitting up. There was a smear of grease on his cheek and a cut on his forehead. Malus looked at him. The laughter died, replaced by something much more intense. The adrenaline was still pumping through her veins. The barrier of protocol, of royalty, of species, it had all been stripped away by the slide. She reached out and touched the cut on his forehead. Her fingers were cool. You came back for her, Malus whispered. I promised, Noah said. She leaned in. It wasn't a cinematic slow-motion moment. It was frantic and clumsy. Her lips crashed into his. It tasted of blood from his split lip and the dust of the collapsing palace. It was desperate. It was a collision of two people who had been lonely for a very long time. Noah froze for a split second. Then he kissed her back. He felt the hum of her skin against his, a physical vibration that made his teeth rattle. They pulled apart, gasping. Malus stared at him, her eyes wide. Her skin was a deep, shocking crimson. She scrambled back, standing up. She looked terrified. Not of the hushwake, but of what she had just done. I cannot, she stammered. I cannot do this. Not with you. Malus, Noah started standing up. No, she held up a hand. You do not know. You do not know what I have done. She turned and ran toward the hangar bay door, her bare feet slapping against the marble. Malus, wait, Noah shouted. But she was gone. She is hiding something big, Oriya said quietly. She was standing by the pile of cushions looking at the door where her mother had vanished. Her color was not just red. It was black underneath, like rot. Noah wiped his mouth. He felt dizzy. Yeah, let's find out what. He walked over to a nearby console that had been ripped from the wall, but was still flickering with power. He needed to know where Soren was. He needed to know the route to the hangar. He plugged his datapad into the port. Rosa, are you still there? Static. Then barely. The comms tower is falling into the clouds. Where are you, Atrium? Noah said. I am trying to access the hangar schematics. But, he stopped. The screen was flashing with a security alert. Unauthorized access detected sector. 12 acoustic cables. User ID verified. Noah stared at the screen. He expected to see Soren's ID. He expected to see a hacked account. But the ID flashing on the screen was not Soren's. It was a dual key authorization. 2 codes required to open the maintenance hatch where the cables were cut. One code belonged to Chancellor Soren. The other code belonged to Queen Malus. Noah felt the blood drain from his face. She helped him, he whispered. She helped him cut the wires. What? Oria asked, stepping closer. Nothing, Noah lied, quickly pulling the datapad. He couldn't tell her. Not yet. Come on. We have to get to that shuttle before your mother leaves without us. But as they ran toward the hangar, the question burned in Noah's mind, louder than the alarms, louder than the hushwake. Why would the Queen destroy her own kingdom? The hangar bay of the Aurora Vault was a cavern of echoing metal and flashing warning lights. The floor was tilted at a nauseating 12 degrees, forcing everyone to brace themselves against bulkheads or secure railings. The shuttle, the Queen's personal escape vessel, sat clamped to the deck, its engines whining in a pitch that grated against the teeth. Noah Mercer skidded into the bay, holding Princess Oria tight against his chest. He saw the shuttle. He saw the open ramp. And then he saw the wall of white uniforms blocking their path. Chancellor Soren stood in the center of the phalanx of royal guards. He looked unbothered by the screaming alarms or the listing floor. He looked like a man who had finally tidied up a messy room. There is nowhere to run, Earthfather, Soren said. His voice was not shouted, but it cut through the mechanical noise with terrifying clarity. The acoustic stabilizers are offline. The city is dying, and you are the cancer. Noah backed up, looking for an exit. The door behind them hissed shut and locked with a heavy metallic thud. Trapped. I saw the logs, Soren, Noah shouted, putting Oria down but keeping a hand on her shoulder. I saw who used the codes to cut the cables. You used the Queen's override. Soren smiled a thin, pitying expression. I am the Chancellor. I do not need overrides. I simply implemented a necessary quarantine. And you, Noah Mercer, are the pathogen. He turned to the guards. Arrest him. The charge is high treason and biological sabotage. 2 guards stepped forward, their shock staves humming with violet energy. No, Oria screamed. She stepped in front of Noah, spreading her small arms wide. He did not break anything. He fixed the loom. He fixed me. Move aside, child, Soren said coldly. He has infected you with chaotic resonance. Look at the palace. It is shaking apart because of the instability he introduced. It is shaking because you cut the wires, Oria yelled back, her voice cracking. Queen Malus stepped out from behind the line of guards. She was not holding the plasma rifle anymore. She was flanked by 2 officers who were gripping her arms, not aggressively, but firmly enough to show she was not in command. Malus, Noah breathed. Tell them. Malus looked at Noah. Her face was pale, drained of all bioluminescence. She looked like a ghost, haunting her own life. Chancellor, Malus said, her voice hollow. The human is under my protection. Your protection is revoked, Majesty, Soren said smoothly. The Council has invoked Article 12. In the event of a monarch's mental compromise, command falls to the Chancellor. You are unwell, Malus. The hushwake has clouded your judgment. Soren pulled a datapad from his belt and held it out to the Queen. Sign the confinement order, Malus. If you do not, I will have the human liquidated right here as an immediate threat. If you sign, he goes to the brig. He lives. Noah looked at Malus. He saw the trap tightening around her throat. Do not do it, Noah said. He is going to kill me anyway. Malus looked at Noah, and for a second, the mask slipped. Noah saw the sheer, unadulterated terror in her eyes. Not for herself, but for him. She took the stylus. Her hand was trembling so violently she could barely hold it. I am sorry, she whispered. She pressed the stylus to the pad. Excellent, Soren said, snatching the pad back. Take him. The guards lunged. Noah fought, swinging a fist into a helmet, but a shock staff slammed into his ribs, sending a convulsion of agony through his nervous system. He hit the deck hard. Noah! Oria cried. She tried to run to him, but a guard grabbed her by the back of her dress, hoisting her up like a doll. Oria kicked and thrashed, tears streaming down her face. She looked at Soren, then at the guards, and finally locked eyes with the captain of the guard. You cannot arrest a dad, she sobbed, a laugh, bubbling up through the tears, a sound of pure heartbreak. That is illegal in my heart. You cannot take him. The captain flinched. The visor obscured his face, but he hesitated. The raw, childish logic of the statement seemed to pierce through the military conditioning. Take her to the conservatory, Soren ordered, his voice sharpening. And get the human out of my sight. As they dragged Noah away, his vision blurring from the pain, the last thing he saw was Malus standing alone on the listing deck, her hands at her sides watching him go. She was not crying. She was standing with the rigid, brittle posture of a woman who had just broken her own soul to keep a promise. The brig was dark. Not the comforting dark of night, but the oppressive, heavy dark of a tomb. The power was fluctuating, causing the containment fields to flicker on and off in a nauseating rhythm. Noah sat on the floor, his back against the cold metal. His ribs throbbed with every breath. He had failed. He had failed Maya. And now, he had failed Oria. It was a perfect circle of incompetence. I hate this part, a voice whispered from the air vent. Noah looked up, squinting into the gloom. Who is there? There was a screech of metal, and the ventilation grate popped off, clattering to the floor. A pair of legs dangled down, followed by a chaotic mess of robes and hair. Rhea Calder dropped into the cell, landing in a crouch. She dusted off her knees and adjusted her glasses, which were crooked. Rhea, Noah stared at her. How did you get past the sensors? I am the archivist, Rhea whispered, pulling a small laser cutter from her sleeve. I know where all the bodies are buried. And more importantly, I know where the ventilation shafts bypass the security grid. You are committing treason, Noah said, standing up and wincing as his ribs protested. I am not committing treason, Rhea sniffed, moving to the door panel and starting to slice through the lock mechanism. I just hate stories with bad endings. They are bad for morale. And honestly, Soren's dialogue is derivative. I am the Chancellor. I do not need overrides. Please. Villainy 101. Sparks flew as she cut the wire. The door slid open with a dying groan. Come on, Rhea said. We have to go down. Deep down. To the hangar, Noah asked. No, Rhea said grimly. To the choir lattice. The Queen is waiting for you. The bowels of the Aurora vault were a nightmare of twisting organic cables and pulsing light. This was the heart of the city, the biological engine that kept them afloat. But it was sick. The cables were gray and withered. The hum was discordant, a low moan of pain. Noah followed Rhea through a narrow maintenance tunnel that smelled of ozone and rot. They emerged into a small junction chamber, lit only by the dying glow of the lattice. Queen Malus was there. She was kneeling on the floor, her hands buried in a mass of exposed fibers. She was trying to weave two severed ends together, her fingers bleeding from the sharp edges of the crystalline nerves. Malus, Noah said softly. She froze. She didn't turn around immediately. She finished the knot, her shoulders shaking with effort. Then she stood up and wiped her hands on her tunic. She looked exhausted, stripped of all royalty. She looked like a mechanic working a double shift at the end of the world. "I thought Sorn had you," Malus said, her voice rough. "Rhea has a problem with bad writing," Noah said, stepping closer. "Why are you down here? You should be on a shuttle." "I cannot leave," Malus said. She gestured to the dying lattice. "It is my fault, all of it." "Sorn cut the cables," Noah argued. "I saw the logs. He used your codes, but—" "He used my codes because I gave them to him 5 years ago," Malus interrupted. She looked up at Noah, her eyes swimming with tears. "The hushwake is not a natural phenomenon, Noah. It is a reaction." Noah went still. "A reaction to what?" "To a therapy project," Malus confessed. "The Allied worlds approached us. They wanted to use Orolithian resonance technology to treat deep trauma patients, soldiers, survivors, children." Noah felt a cold hand grip his heart. "Maya," Malus nodded. "Your daughter was one of the test subjects. The project was supposed to be a bridge between our species, but the interface was flawed. When Maya's mind connected with the lattice, her grief was so pure, so massive, it created a feedback loop. It didn't just break the machine, it traumatized the lattice itself. The hushwake is not a monster, it is a bruise. It is the lattice flinching away from the pain of a human child." Noah stared at her. The silence in the tunnel was deafening. "You knew," Noah whispered. "When I came here, when I fixed the wire, you knew who I was." "I suspected," Malus said. "When Aurea bonded with you, I knew. Aurea was born the day the project failed. Some of the resonance that was released went into her. That is why she feels so much. She is carrying the echo of your daughter's pain." Noah backed away. He felt sick. "You used me. You brought me into the right not to save the city but to fix your mistake. You made me love a child who is basically a ghost of the one I lost." "I did not make you love her," Malus shouted, stepping forward. Her anger flared hot and genuine. "You loved her because you are a father. I had no choice. Noah Sorn was going to kill her. I needed you to anchor her. You needed a tool," Noah yelled back. "I needed a partner," Malus screamed. They stood there chest to chest, breathing hard in the dim light. The anger was there, hot and sharp. But beneath it was something else, a desperate, terrified recognition. "I hate that you lied to me," Noah said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I know," Malus whispered back. "I hate it too." She looked at his lips. He looked at hers. The world was ending around them. The floor was shaking. The air was running out. And all Noah wanted to do was kiss her until the shouting stopped. "We are terrible at this," Noah said. "We are," Malus agreed. "But we are all we have." Rhea cleared her throat loudly from the tunnel entrance. "As touching as this unresolved sexual tension is, I feel compelled to mention that Chancellor Sorn has taken the princess to the Silence Conservatory. And according to the energy readings, he is powering up the extraction array." Noah and Malus snapped apart. "The conservatory," Malus gasped. "He is going to extract the core. He thinks if he pulls the human resonance out of Aurea, the hushwake will recede." "It will kill her," Noah said. The anger vanished, replaced by cold resolve. "Yes," Malus said. "And if he does it, the shock will shatter the lattice completely. The Aurora vault will fall." The Silence Conservatory was a greenhouse of nightmares. It was a massive domed room, filled with plants that grew in total silence. They were pale, translucent things that shivered if you spoke too loudly. Aurea sat in the center of the room, strapped into a chair made of white chrome. A heavy glass helmet was lowered over her head. Chancellor Sorn stood at the control console. He was adjusting dials with precise, surgeon-like movements. 2 guards stood by the door, their faces obscured by helmets, their posture rigid. Aurea's heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She could feel the silence of the room pressing against her ears. It was heavy. It tasted like metal. She looked at the guard on her left. He was twitching slightly. The silence made everyone nervous. "Hey," Oria said. Her voice sounded muffled inside the helmet. The guard didn't answer. "Do you guys get paid extra for being creepy?" Oria asked. "Or is it just a hobby?" The guard turned his head slightly. "Silence, prisoner." "I am just asking," Oria continued, her voice trembling but determined. "Because if you are doing this for free, you are getting ripped off. Sorn is going to let this whole room fall into the clouds once he gets what he wants. You know that, right?" "He said we would be evacuated," the guard muttered. "He lies," Oria said. "He told me he liked my dress once. And look at me now. I am strapped to a chair." The guard shifted his weight. He looked at the door. Then he looked at the window. Oria noted the glance. The window. It was thinner than the walls. If she could get them to look away. "Initializing extraction sequence," Sorn announced. "Subject prepare for resonance separation. This will be unpleasant." The helmet began to hum. A high-pitched vibration drilled into Oria's skull. In the corridor outside, Noah, Malus, and Rhea were crouching behind a fallen statue. "There are 4 guards at the main entrance," Rhea whispered, checking her scanner. "And the door is magnetically sealed." "We do not have time for stealth," Noah said. He looked at Malus. "Can you override the door?" "Not without Sorn knowing," Malus said. "But I can overload the lighting grid in that sector. It will buy us 5 seconds of darkness." "5 seconds is enough," Noah said. "Noah," Rhea grabbed his arm. "Wait, look at the readings." She turned her scanner screen toward him. "The extraction has started. The hushwake is reacting. It is surging toward the conservatory. If we breach that door, the silence is going to flood in. If we don't stop Sorn in time and the hushwake hits Oria, while she is open, it will erase her. Completely." Noah looked at the scanner. Then he looked at the map of the city. "If we go in there," Noah realized, "we are opening the floodgates. The hushwake will take the conservatory. Maybe the whole wing." "We could save the city," Malus said softly. "If we divert the power to the engines instead of the door, we could stabilize the vault. We could save thousands of people." "But Oria dies," Noah said. Malus looked at him. Tears were streaming down her face again. This was the choice of a queen. Save the many or save the one. "She is my daughter," Malus whispered. "But they are my people." Noah grabbed her shoulders. "She is not a statistic, Malus. She is the future. If we build a world on the corpse of a child, we do not deserve to fly." He turned to the shadows. "Rosa, I know you are there." For a second, nothing happened. Then the air shimmered and Rosa Vale decloaked. She was holding a heavy wrench and looking annoyed. "I really need to get better stealth tech," Rosa grumbled. "You heard me." "I smelled the synthetic tobacco," Noah said. "Rosa, we need a third option." Rosa looked at the door, then at Noah. "You want to be a hero, Noah. Heroes die, usually screaming." "I do not want to be a hero," Noah said. "I want to be a father." Rosa sighed. She spun the wrench in her hand. "If you want to atone, Noah, do not die like a hero. That is the easy way out. Dying is quiet. Living and loving someone knowing you could lose them. That is the hard part. That is where the noise is." She tapped her belt. "I have a sonic charge. It is illegal in 12 systems. It will not just open the door. It will blow the hinges off. But once it goes off, the sound will attract the hushwake, like blood attracts sharks. You will have maybe 2 minutes before the room becomes a vacuum." "Do it," Noah said. "You are going to owe me so much overtime," Rosa muttered. She slapped the charge onto the door. "Get ready," Noah yelled. Malus raised her hands, gathering the last of her bioluminescent energy. Rhea pulled out a stun baton. Noah gripped his wrench. Boom. The sound was not an explosion. It was a concussion. The heavy metal doors were blasted inward, tumbling across the floor of the conservatory, like leaves. Noah charged in through the smoke. "Get away from her!" he roared. Sorn spun around his hand, hovering over the execute button. "You are too late!" He slammed his hand down. The machine screamed. Aurea arched her back, her mouth opening in a silent cry of agony as the extraction beam hit her. At the same moment, the shattered doorway behind them turned black. The hushwake poured in. It moved like a liquid shadow, a tidal wave of absolute nothingness. It flowed over the guards, and they simply dropped their bodies, going limp, their minds wiped clean in an instant. "The core!" Sorn shouted, ignoring the encroaching darkness. "Give me the core." Noah didn't run for Sorn. He ran for Aurea. He leaped over the console, tackling the chair. He ripped the helmet off her head, throwing it aside. "Aurea!" Noah shook her. "Aurea, look at me!" She was limp. Her eyes were rolled back in her head. Her skin was gray. "No!" Noah begged. "No, no, no. Do not be quiet. Be loud. Please be loud." The black tide of the hushwake swirled around his boots. He could feel it biting into his mind, telling him to just let go. "It is easier to sleep," the silence whispered. "Just stop trying." "Noah!" Milas screamed. She was standing on top of the console, firing blasts of light into the darkness, trying to hold back the tide. "We are losing the room," Sorn laughed. He was standing in the middle of the black water, holding a canister that glowed with a faint, trapped white light. He had done it. He had extracted a piece of Aurea's resonance. "I have it!" Sorn triumphed. "Order, pure, silent order." But then Aurea gasped. It was a wet, ragged sound. She opened her eyes. They were not violet. They were burning with a terrifying, chaotic mix of colors. She looked at Noah. Then she looked at Sorn. "Give it back," Aurea whispered. But she didn't say it with her voice. She said it with the room. The plants in the conservatory exploded. Vines of crystal and light whipped out, smashing the glass dome above them. The wind roared in. The real wind. The loud, messy, chaotic storm from outside. Sorn looked up his triumph, turning to horror as the storm crashed into his silent order. "Noah," Aurea said, gripping his shirt. "Sing." "What?" Noah yelled over the wind. "Sing," Aurea screamed. "The song, make it loud." Noah grabbed Melis's hand as she jumped down to join them. He grabbed Rhea. He grabbed Aurea. And in the middle of the screaming storm, facing a tidal wave of silence and a madman with a stolen soul, Noah Mercer threw back his head and howled a note of pure, defiant, broken humanity. The palace shuddered. And then, for the first time in 1,000 years, the Aurora Vault screamed back. The Silence Conservatory was no longer a room. It was a throat, and it was swallowing them whole. The hushwake did not move like water or smoke. It moved like ink dropped into a glass of clear water, curling and expanding with a terrifying heavy grace. It possessed mass. When it touched the floor, the marble did not just stop vibrating. It seemed to cease existing, turning into a flat gray void that refused to reflect light. Noah Mercer stood in the center of the storm, his boots vanishing into the rising tide of nothingness. He opened his mouth to scream Aurea's name, but the sound died before it passed his lips. It was a physical sensation, like swallowing a mouthful of dry cotton. The vibration of his vocal cords was simply absorbed, eaten by the hungry air. "Be loud," Aurea had said. But how could you be loud in a vacuum? Above him, Queen Melis was fighting a war of light. She stood atop the shattered remains of the control console, her body a beacon of blinding white bioluminescence. She was burning her own life force, converting her royal resonance into physical photons to push back the dark. Every time the black tide lunged toward Aurea, Melis threw up a wall of brilliance, but the light was flickering. She was exhausted. "It is fascinating, is it not?" The voice vibrated directly into Noah's skull. It did not travel through the air. It was a bone conduction transmission, amplified by the technology Chancellor Sorn was wearing. Sorn stood near the back of the room, encased in a personal harmonic dampener field. He held the canister, the core he had extracted from Aurea, clutched to his chest. He looked like a man who had finally solved a difficult equation. "You are trying to shout," Soren's voice echoed in Noah's head, smooth and patronizing. "But the Hushwake does not understand volume. It only understands entropy. It seeks the lowest energy state, silence, peace." Noah scrambled forward, wading through the heavy silence. His legs felt like lead. He reached the chair where Aurea lay slumped. She was gray. Not the slate gray of the hushed servants, but a translucent, fading gray, like a sketch being erased from a page. Her eyes were open, staring at the shattered dome where the storm raged, but she saw nothing. Noah grabbed her hand. It was cold. Not freezing, but the inanimate cold of a stone. Aurea Noah thought, projecting the name with every ounce of desperate will he had. "Do not go. Stay here." He felt a faint flutter in her hand, a tiny weak pulse. Soren walked closer, his boots protected by his dampener field, crunching on the glass. "She is gone, Earthfather," Soren said. "I have what I need. The chaotic element, the human stain, is trapped in this canister. What remains in the chair is pure Auralithian biology. Once the Hushwake finishes digesting the residual emotions, she will be perfect. A perfect silent vessel." Noah turned to look at Soren. The rage that exploded in his chest was so hot it almost hurt. "She is a child," Noah mouthed. The words were silent, but his lips shaped them with violence. Soren tapped his earpiece, allowing Noah's voice to be synthesized into the bone conduction link. "She is a structural vulnerability," Soren corrected. "You look at her and see a daughter. I look at her and see a crack in the dam. If I do not seal her, the ocean comes in. A child is not worth an empire, Noah. Surely as an engineer you understand the concept of acceptable losses." Noah stood up. He released Aurea's hand. He stepped toward Soren. "You want order?" Noah said, his synthesized voice rasping in the link. "You think silence is order. But it is not. It is just death with a tidy label." "Death is a part of life," Soren replied, checking the readings on the canister. "The Dominion has spent 1,000 years trying to be a song that never ends. We are exhausted. Perhaps it is time to rest." "No," Noah said. "It is time to wake up." Noah closed his eyes. He stopped trying to scream with his lungs. He remembered the echo loom. He remembered how it felt to be inside the music. He reached into the deepest, darkest pocket of his memory. He bypassed the grief of the funeral. He bypassed the anger of the divorce. He went to the kitchen in his old apartment on a Tuesday morning. He remembered the smell of burnt toast, the sound of a cartoon playing on the television, a chaotic, loud, annoying screech of a bird. He remembered Maya laughing because she had spilled milk on the cat. It was a messy memory. It was imperfect. It was irritating and loud and incredibly beautifully real. Noah grabbed that memory, and he threw it. He didn't throw it at Soren. He threw it at the silence. Splat. The Hushwake rippled. It was visible. The black ink shuddered as if something solid had hit it. The silence recoiled. Soren frowned. "What are you doing?" Noah didn't answer. He threw another one. The time he scraped his knee. The time he got a parking ticket. The time he fell in love with a woman who laughed like a hyena. He bombarded the room with the sheer, gritty texture of human existence. "Stop it," Soren commanded, stepping back. "You are creating dissonance." "I am creating life," Noah roared, and this time a faint, scratchy sound actually escaped his lips. The air was beginning to vibrate again. Above them, Queen Melis saw what he was doing. She saw the black tide retreating, confused by the jagged, nonsensical rhythm of Noah's memories. She understood. "Rhea," Melis shouted, her voice thin but audible. "The archives open the history files. All of them." Rhea, Calder, crouching behind the wreckage of the door, didn't ask questions. She tapped her datapad furiously. "Broadcasting on all frequencies. Brace for impact. I am playing the great debate of the Third Dynasty. It is 6 hours of people shouting about tax reform. A wall of noise hit the room. It wasn't music. It was the recorded history of a civilization. Arguments, speeches, court jests, gossip. The hushwake writhed. It hated this. It wanted pure tones or silence. It couldn't digest the complexity of a tax dispute. Sorn staggered. The canister in his arms began to vibrate violently. The core of Aurea, the human chaos he had trapped, was reacting to the noise. It wanted to rejoin the chorus. No, Sorn yelled, wrestling with the device. Stabilize, dampen. He turned the dial on his harmonic field to maximum. He pointed a suppression emitter at Noah. You want to be loud, Sorn snarled. Then scream while you die. A beam of concentrated sonic pressure fired from Sorn's emitter. It was designed to liquefy organs. Noah didn't move. He didn't dodge. He stood directly in front of Aurea's chair, but the beam never hit him. A figure dropped from the ceiling. It was not a guard. It was Melis. She landed between Noah and the beam. She didn't use a shield. She threw her arms wide and caught the sound. Her body absorbed the impact. She cried out a sound of pure agony, but she didn't fall. Her skin flared with a light so intense it turned the gray room white. Melis, Noah shouted. Get her! Melis gasped, her bioluminescence flickering wildly, her skin turning bruised and dark where the sound had hit her. Get my daughter! She lunged at Sorn. It was not a royal attack. It was a brawl. She tackled the Chancellor, dragging him down into the black sludge of the hushwake. You mad woman! Sorn shrieked, striking at her with the canister. You are destroying the crown. I am saving the family, Melis yelled back, biting his hand. The canister flew from Sorn's grip. It skittered across the floor, spinning toward the edge of the shattered dome, toward the drop into the clouds. The core, Sorn scrambled after it, abandoning his fight with the queen. He was obsessed. He needed the device. Noah saw the canister sliding. He saw Aurea in the chair. He saw Melis bleeding on the floor. He made his choice. He turned his back on the weapon. He turned his back on Sorn. He grabbed Aurea's face in his hands. Aurea, Noah said. The air was loud now, filled with the roar of the wind and Rhea's broadcast. Aurea, listen to me. I am not going to tell you a story about a princess today. He leaned his forehead against hers. I am going to tell you about a dad who was scared, Noah whispered. He was so scared he forgot how to sing. But then, he met a little girl who hid in a closet, and she taught him that it is okay to be cracked because that is how the sound gets out. Aurea's eyelids fluttered. Come back, Noah pleaded. I am here. I am right here. And I am loud. Deep within the echo loom miles away, in the center of the palace, a mechanism clicked. It had been listening. It heard the specific timbre of Noah's voice, the frequency of a parent calling a child back from the dark. The loom roared. It sent a pulse through the floor of the conservatory. It wasn't a note. It was a dissonant, grinding, beautiful chord. The hushwake shattered. Like glass dropping on concrete, the physical silence cracked. The black ink turned to gray dust, and the wind blew it away. Sorn, reaching for the canister, at the edge of the precipice, froze. He looked up as the silence evaporated. He looked at the canister, which was now dark, the light inside having returned to its source. Impossible, Sorn whispered. Love is inefficient. The wind gusted. The floor beneath Sorn, already weakened by the breach, gave way. He didn't scream. He simply looked at Noah with an expression of profound confusion, clutching his useless machine, and fell backward into the endless ocean of clouds. Noah didn't watch him fall. He was watching Aurea. She took a breath. A deep, gasping breath. The gray faded from her skin. Color rushed back, not the violet of royalty, but a swirling, chaotic nebula of pink gold and earth brown. She blinked. Her eyes focused on Noah. You are heavy, she croaked. Noah laughed. It was a sob and a laugh and a cough all at once. He pulled her out of the chair and crushed her against his chest. He buried his face in her hair. She smelled of ozone and roasted nuts. "I got you," Noah wept. "I got you." Malis dragged herself up from the floor. She was bruised, her dress was torn, and her hair was a disaster. She looked magnificent. She walked over to them, her steps unsteady. She reached out and placed a hand on Noah's back, and another on Oria's head. The three of them stood there, a huddle of broken shapes against the wind, anchoring each other, while the city slowly, painfully began to right itself. The infirmary was quiet, but it was a good quiet, the quiet of healing. Oria was sleeping in a biobed monitors, humming a steady rhythm. Her skin was a soft, sleeping lavender. Noah sat in a chair beside the bed, holding a cup of terrible synthetic coffee. His ribs were taped. He had a bandage over one eye. Queen Malis stood by the viewport looking out at the repaired skyline of the Aurora Vault. The hushwake had receded to the far horizon, pushed back by the reactivated choir lattice. "She is stable," Dr. Eris, a tall Oralithian with kind eyes, had told them an hour ago. "Her resonance levels are unique, but stable." Noah watched Oria sleep. He felt a peace he hadn't felt in 10 years. But there was a question nagging at him, a sharp shard of glass in his gut. "Malis," Noah said. The queen turned. She didn't pretend to misunderstand. She walked over and sat on the edge of the empty bed opposite him. "You want to know," she said. "I want to know why she smells like roasted nuts," Noah said quietly. "I want to know why she knows the name Whisperkeeper. I want to know why, when the hushwake hit her, she looked at me with eyes that were brown, not violet." Malis looked down at her hands. "I told you about the project, the resonance therapy." "You said it failed," Noah said. "You said Maya died." "Her body died," Malis said. Her voice was barely a whisper. The feedback loop was too much for a human physiology. Her heart stopped. "We tried to revive her. We failed." She looked up, meeting Noah's gaze. "But energy does not vanish, Noah. You know that. It changes form. When Maya connected to the lattice, she didn't just touch it. She imprinted it. Her neural map, her memories, her personality, her soul, if you want to call it that, it was uploaded. It was caught in the buffer." Noah stopped breathing. He set the coffee down because his hand was shaking too hard. "Where?" Noah asked. "Nowhere," Malis said. "It was just data, floating in the lattice, until 6 months later, when I was pregnant." She looked at Oria. "The hushwake was beginning. The lattice was unstable. My pregnancy was difficult. The royal physician said the fetus was not developing a resonance signature. It was empty. A stillbirth of the soul." Tears spilled down Malis's cheeks. "I was desperate. I went to the core. I prayed to the lattice. I asked it to save my child. I asked it to give her a spark." Noah closed his eyes. He knew what was coming. "The lattice answered," Malis whispered. "It found a compatible pattern. A pattern that was strong. A pattern that was full of life and noise and stubbornness. It took the map of Maya Mercer and poured it into Oria." Noah stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. He walked to the window. He felt like he was falling. Maya. His Maya. She wasn't gone. She had been here the whole time, hidden in the skin of an alien princess, living a life that wasn't hers with memories that bled through in dreams. "She is not Maya," Malis said quickly, standing up. "Noah, please understand. Oria is Oria. She has her own life, her own choices. But the foundation, the emotional architecture, it is Maya. She is a hybrid, not of DNA but of soul." Noah turned around. "Did you know when you called me?" "I hoped," Malis admitted. "I saw the similarities, the way she laughed, the way she got angry. But I didn't know for sure until until I saw you together." "You let me mourn her for 10 years, Noah," said his voice cracking, "while she was playing in your garden." I was afraid, Milas cried. I was afraid you would take her, or that you would hate her, or that the council would dissect her. I would never hate her, Noah said. Then, what are you feeling right now? Milas asked. I do not know, Noah shouted. I feel like I lost my daughter twice and found her once, and I do not know who I am looking at anymore. The shouting woke her. Dad! The word was small, sleepy. Noah froze. He turned to the bed. Oria was sitting up, rubbing her eyes. She looked at Noah. Her eyes were violet again, but the expression, the tilt of the head. You were shouting, Oria said. You are always shouting. Humans are so loud. She looked at Milas, then back at Noah. She sensed the tension. The air in the room was sharp with it. Oria swung her legs over the side of the bed. She slid down. She walked over to Noah. She was so small. She reached out and took his hand. I had a dream, Oria said. I was running in a place with green grass, and there was a big machine. And you were there. But you looked younger. And I asked you to make it gentle. Noah stopped breathing. And then, Oria continued, I woke up, and I was in the chair, and you were calling me. You said I didn't have to hide in the closet. She looked up at him. Her eyes searched his face with a wisdom that belonged to 2 lifetimes. Am I broken, Earth Father? She asked. Noah dropped to his knees. He was eye level with her. He looked for Maya. He saw her, in the mischief of the smile, in the bravery of the jaw. He looked for Oria. He saw her too, in the violet eyes, in the glowing skin, in the gentle way she held his hand. He had a choice. He could try to separate them. He could try to pull Maya out to demand his daughter back. But that would destroy Oria. That would kill the girl standing in front of him. Or he could accept the miracle. No, Noah whispered. You are not broken. You are a symphony. Oria smiled. It was a smile that lit up the room better than any bioluminescence. She stepped closer. She wrapped her arms around his neck. Can I sit on your lap, Earth Father? She whispered. The repetition of the question hit Noah like a physical blow. But this time, it wasn't a political stunt. It wasn't a desperate plea for safety. It was a hello. Noah lifted her up. He held her tight. He felt the weight of her, the reality of her. Always, Noah choked out. Milas watched them. She was weeping silent, silver tears. She stepped forward tentatively. Noah, she said. Noah looked at the queen over Oria's shoulder. He saw the guilt. He saw the love. He saw the woman who had dived into silence to save them both. You don't replace anyone, Noah said firmly, looking at Oria, but speaking to Milas, and to the ghost of Maya, and to himself. You add. Love isn't a pie. We don't run out of slices. He reached out his free hand. Milas took it. The circuit was closed. The resonance in the room settled into a warm, steady hum. A major chord. Epilogue, the space where noise is allowed. 3 months later, the Aurora vault was still being repaired. Scaffolding covered the west wing, and the choir lattice was undergoing a complete retuning. But the atmosphere had changed. It was louder. In the market squares, people were arguing. Not polite debates, but real, passionate arguments about the price of skylark eggs. Children were running in the corridors. Music, actual music with drums and brass, was being played in the plazas. Noah Mercer sat on the steps of the Sun Throne. He was wearing a royal tunic, but he had rolled the sleeves up and there was a grease stain on the hem. He was holding a datapad reviewing the structural integrity reports for the new acoustic dampeners. Queen Milas sat beside him. She was not wearing the crown. She was peeling an orange. The council is complaining again, Milas said, handing him a slice. They say the new public parks are too noisy. The laughter disrupts their meditation. Tell them to buy earplugs, Noah said, taking the orange. Or better yet, tell them to go laugh a little. It is good for the digestion. Milas smiled. It was a real smile, one that reached her eyes. The gray patch on her neck was gone. Soren's trial starts tomorrow, Malis said, her voice turning serious. He still claims he was saving us. He was saving a statue, Noah said. We are saving a living thing. Living things are messy. I am still learning, Malis admitted. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Being human, it is exhausting. You feel everything, all the time. How do you stand it? We share it, Noah said, kissing the top of her head. That is the trick. You do not carry it alone. A sound of crashing glass came from the other side of the hall. Oops, Oria's voice echoed. Noah and Malis looked up. Oria was chasing a robotic cat through the pillars. She had knocked over a vase. A priceless, 3,000-year-old vase. She stopped. She looked at the broken shards. She looked at her parents. For a second, she looked terrified. She looked like she was going to hide. But then Noah smiled. Malis laughed. It was ugly anyway, Malis shouted. Oria grinned. Her skin flashed a brilliant, joyful orange. She turned and kept running, her laughter ringing out like a silver bell, echoing through the vast, beautiful, noisy palace. Outside, the clouds glowed. The hushwake was gone, and the Aurora Vault, for the first time in its history, was truly singing.